And I believe we are live. If you guys missed this part, obviously, Skype has been acting super weird. Like you can hear the noises saying that we're starting recording, but it says it doesn't start recording to a few seconds later. But I think we're ready to rock today, guys. We did the members only video for the public earlier today. Same thing as the last couple days. 100 likes. We'll do them for the public throughout the preseason. Regular season's still a few days away, but let's break down this bad boy, go through a few of our favorite top plays. I think like for anybody who's thought about joining the 5 pack, you can see like the members only video, there's just way more information. Like some of our favorite plays yesterday didn't make the second video, and those were the ones that help us each have like good nights. But it's hard to just pick your favorites and just skinny it down to just a couple guys to talk about.
Yeah, I know. I had a couple of people ask me after that Halliburton Kyle Guy incident, like why we don't have a joint Twitter account to tweet stuff out. And, stuff changes in preseason all the time. And it's that fine line, right? Because we want to give information out to the public, but, really we want to be concerned with our members. So if you want all the juice, you got to sign up.
Yeah. Like anything in life, right? Like the best stuff isn't going to come for free.
No doubt.
All right, guys. So a couple things to bring up before we get into the actual favorite plays of the day. You see who the cover boy is. We'll get into why it is that we like him. If you have not signed up to play on overlaydfs.com yet, I don't know what you're waiting for, guys. The matchup shop is going to be printing money for us all NBA season. Gives you the ability to run fun parlays for those of you who play more like Mr. Bellman over here and like to go for the big money. If you play a little bit more conservative in cash games and don't have the time to, 150 mass enter FanDuel and DraftKings, this might be a great opportunity. Just pick your favorite one on the day and go in on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's like we always talk about. There's so many ways to skin the cat, and the matchup shop and their GPPs, like their not their
The
the
progressive
matchup
tournaments.
their progressive tournaments obviously offer a bunch of different ways to win money. Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second.
No problem. Like you can win big on that. Like we know the guy who took down the $20,000 jackpot. That's Mr. DFS Wolfpack. Probably still enjoying spending a little bit of that money. You can follow him on Twitter and check him out as well, guys. Current 5 pack promotions, and there is the NBA only package that's up for sale. That's the full NBA season. No monthly payments, no yearly payments. The $75 gets you everything preseason, postseason, regular season, one-time payment via PayPal or Venmo below. Otherwise, the lifetime pass, which is normally $400, is 25% off right now. That is all 3 sports permanently moving forward. No future payments. I had somebody ask me yesterday who thought about buying it. Well, how do I know you're still going to be here in a couple of weeks? Well, I've been doing this for 7 years now. Haven't gone anywhere or whatever it's been. It feels like about 7 years-ish. I guess I haven't counted exactly. I can't guarantee life won't change, but 7 years later, still doing the same thing. It's the best encouragement I give, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. We've been doing this. I've been with you for a few years now. We have no plans of going anywhere, and yeah, that's just is what it is. I guess at some point you'll have to take us for our word for it.
Yeah, and I did. So I've been talking about the year-long fantasy basketball leagues I run. I had like a whole bunch of people ask me yesterday to be in, so I've added in one more. It's a bit more for novices. It's a snake draft, head-to-head points league, $50 entry free. It's drafting Monday night, 8 p.m. Central. If you're interested, hit me up in my DM. Subscribe to the station if you're new to it. We're going to run through the new format for the show this year. We've talked about it the last couple of days. We're going to do the same thing here again today. And let's start out with a cash game lock. And based on a conversation we had, I might actually change this one to Luka Doncic right now, but I'm going to go with Steph Curry, who is up right now. So, in full transparency, I am not playing cash games in the preseason. For me, this is all about GPPs, playing around with a little bit with the core group of players. But if I were to be playing cash games tonight, I do think both Luka and Curry are guys that I would be locking into the guard position. We saw Curry be very popular the other day. He was 53% owned in the GPP I used him in, maybe a little bit higher or a little less, depending on where he used him. Went off for almost 50 DK points. He's in the same matchup today, a little bit more extensive, but still very, very affordable. The guard spot is loaded today. So if you want to pivot to over some of the other guys we talked about, like Trae Young or John Morant, totally get those as well. There's some really, really good big money guards today. And I would encourage you guys to give them a long, hard look. And Curry is one of them that I'm going to be looking at. People also love to play Curry. So he's usually very, very popular.
Yeah, he usually gets a lot of love. He was even higher owned in the GPP I was in, so I'm sure he's going to be popular. I'm not going to play him either. So, yeah, I don't know. I didn't know if you said you weren't going to play him or you weren't going to play cash games, but I have
I
multiple
won't
guys.
play cash games.
I have multiple guys ahead of Curry tonight. He went off last game, but we know he can go off. I don't think he has anything to prove in the preseason. This is a guy with multiple NBA titles. Wanted to get his feet wet last game, hadn't played in a while, playing with his new teammates. I wouldn't be surprised to see his minutes go down here personally. So this is a guy I have zero interest in him, especially at a ton of ownership.
If you go through the guards that we talked about for big money, Luka, Curry, Morant, and Trae Young, if you had to take your best guess on their ownership for today, how would you rank them?
Luka will be the highest owned.
Think Luka? Okay.
Yeah, Luka will be the highest owned, I imagine. And then after that, probably Steph and then the other two. But I don't think it's really like significant enough to matter. So you play who you want. Like for me, I don't think that if you played cash games and you played Trae Young or John Morant, I don't think that's the wrong play at all.
All right. Next up, cover boy for the day. A guy that I know you like in GPPs, and I'm also 2 feet on board with right here. Mostly, I think the best thing to like right here, besides the fact Russell is out, the position eligibility is bigger here.
The position eligibility and the price tag, 4,500 for a guy we know can get buckets. This is a guy that Minnesota obviously likes, gave him a nice contract extension, going to play nice minutes here. Again, no D'Angelo Russell is nice because he eats up a ton of usage. D'Angelo Russell's a guy that loves to shoot. Take that out of the lineup, all of a sudden shots open up, obviously. So you got Karl Anthony Towns not being super aggressive. I really like Beasley here. And you mentioned it. The dual position eligibility is just massive on a slate where we like a ton of guards.
I haven't checked. Did DraftKings offer a bonus for felonies this year? Because that might get you a few extra points.
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay. Well, if that comes out tonight, then Malik Beasley moves up my list even farther.
They got crazy stuff going on, so you never know.
I think something, you mentioned Russell shoots a ton. I have to assume that an aggressive combo guard like Malik Beasley is going to enjoy playing without D'Angelo Russell tonight. I don't think these two are a match made in heaven. We'll see how that works out throughout the regular season. But a guy like this who likes to be an assertive and aggressive from the outside, I think he plays free and loose tonight. I think this is a good spot for him.
100% agree.
All right, next up, our mutual play of the day, a guy that I'm also going to say I don't think he gets a lot of love tonight. And that's Troy Brown Jr., who I feel like we've brought up on the show going back to the bubble very, very routinely because all he does is get buckets, plays aggressively out on the field. Russell Westbrook is out tonight. Bradley Beal is slated to play small minutes. We just saw Brown have a very good game, and I believe 22 total minutes in his last game. I expect him, because of the price tier that he's in and the fact that people are going to want to play the more expensive players, not to get a lot of love tonight. But this is a guy fully capable of putting up monster DFS minutes. This is a good matchup against an absolutely pathetic Pistons team.
Yeah, so a lot of times we disagree on stuff. Sounds like we might on Curry, but this one I'm fully on board with. You mentioned him a couple of times on our members-only video. It seemed like each time I was like more and more on board because I just get it. It just fits with how I like to play. He's priced in a tier that people don't like to go to because especially on these slates, people like to spend up and spend down because there's a lot of good value. But Brown is a guy, like you mentioned, he puts up DFS points with the best of them. Not like the superstars, but right on that next level, especially when he's the guy with no Westbrook, Beal playing limited minutes. He's going to be the guy here. They have some other cheaper guys that are in play that I'm more on board with, and even when we talked about them. But Brown, I think, is a really, really good look. And you're right. I don't think he gets a lot of love at all.
If I had to guess, I think he's going to have single-digit ownership percentages next to him.
I love that.
Yeah, in a game or a night like tonight, a lot of times when you go through 7-game slates in the regular season, yeah, there's going to be a bunch of guys in play, but you can really skip 20, maybe 25 players. On a preseason slate like this, it's significantly higher, which leads me to just think that in his price range, Troy Brown Jr. is going to get a little bit overlooked. Even when he's made a lot of sense, like in last season, he oftentimes would get overlooked. And at this price tag, he could go off right here.
Yeah, so I just like that call a lot. You're right. I remember playing him a couple of times last year, and he did not get the love he deserved. Man, I'm just with you here.
Yeah, you don't think of him as a guy who's going to go for 40 to 50 DK points, but how many times did he do that last year in the absence of Bradley Beal? I have to say it was at least a handful.
Another point that you love that is true here. I think this is a good time to bring it up. A lot of these slates, there are a lot of guys in play, but a lot of the ownership gets condensed because you hear reports on guys playing a lot of minutes, right? So guys will flock to those guys because you want guys that you know are going to play minutes. You don't need that many outlier plays. So if Brown's going to be really low owned, like you don't need many more.
We talked about all those big money guards today. And if those guys play big minutes, they probably outscore Troy Brown Jr. almost every single time. But that doesn't mean that they do play bigger minutes today. We can all have our theories about the way that things play out. You get very, very little firm information in the preseason, and I just think Troy Brown Jr. is a guy that gives you the ability to go for, I don't know, what he went for the other day, like 35 DK points, 30 DK points in 22 minutes. What if he played 30 tonight?
Yeah, and I do think, like, the last point, it doesn't matter as much in the preseason, but it matters. Like, the Pistons suck.
Yeah, I mean, the Pistons are, to me, one of the less desirable teams to always pick on in the preseason or in the regular season because they might get blown out a lot. But I don't care about that in the preseason. They're just not very good.
Yeah, they don't play good defense. They don't score a lot. They turn the ball over. So definitely interested in picking guys against them. I don't really care about matchups in preseason because I much more care about minutes. Like the minutes are what you care about because some guys won't play many minutes at all. But it's not like that the Pistons suck doesn't help his cause here.
No, I think I'm as guilty of this as anybody out there. You kind of overlook the matchup in the preseason because it's not as big of a thing. But that doesn't say it doesn't exist. Would you rather go up against a terrible Detroit Pistons team or go up against, a Boston Celtics team, in their last start with all their guys out there, they're going to play good, hard-nosed defense? Give me the Pistons. They're awful.
100%.
All right, so we're going to move into kind of the long shot plays of the day. Here's a guy that we kind of talked about early, and much like Troy Brown, I think he's in a price range where he's going to not get a lot of buyers. So calling him a long shot today is probably not the right word because he's actually a pretty good player who we expect to see minutes. But I think he falls into the category of going to be relatively low owned this evening strictly because of the good big money guards that we've already mentioned, the Trae Youngs, the Luka Doncic's of the world, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think Devontae Graham is a guy who's going to be, again, 30, 40, 50% owned on this slate. Didn't take long, but surprise, surprise, Gordon Hayward is hurt again. And while Hayward and Graham do not play the same position, they do play a little bit of that kind of like combo distributor shooter. So this is just another way for Devontae Graham to take a couple more shots, have the ball in his hand a little bit more. The Hornets coach was quoted as saying that he expects his guys, his main players to play at least 25 minutes tonight. This is a guy that we saw him cook a bunch last year. Kind of came out of as a little bit of a surprise at moments last year, was really, really good from a DFS perspective. Shooting guard eligibility for a guy playing, kind of that shooting guard, point guard role. And I just don't think he's going to get a ton of love tonight because he falls in that weird mid-tier.
So I agree with you. I like to play a lot. I will only say I think he gets a little bit more love than you think. I've seen a bunch of people already talk about him. So we might have to work with you on what we consider a long shot play. I know Isaac Okoro yesterday was like 70% owned. So, yeah, man, not really using the word long shot too well. I like the play call, though, so I can't argue with you too much.
All right, next up, your long shot of the day, a guy that we talked about yesterday but then had to pivot off of later in the day.
Yeah, so he was a guy that was on a ton of people's radars last slate. I'm sure he was in a lot of people's lineups, and they pivot off of him. He still ended up being somewhere between 15 and 20%, and you just got to imagine that it's even lower here. The reason he was a letdown last game is because he only played like 15 minutes. They said that he was only going to play 15 minutes. Well, now he should be back playing 20, 25, potentially even 30. I think Corey Joseph is out, which only helps his cause here. All the way down to 4,400. Has that shooting guard eligibility, which you need. He's a guy I like a lot here. I think that this is a perfect like GPP type of play. A guy that was pretty popular, getting talked about all day the last slate. Now his ownership is going to be, much, much lower. Even though he wasn't chalk last slate because the news came out, again, he was still 20% owned, and I think he's much less owned here.
Yeah, I wonder what his ownership would be without that news, because I don't know how many pivots you could have made, because I believe when you discussed it with me that the other games had already started, so there was only so many pivots you can make. I would assume, though, that after the letdown game last time out, that it's going to go down. And also there's a lot more games on the slate as well.
I was surprised to see that he wasn't as high owned as I thought he would be, even after the news, because you're right. I was surprised to see that him and Kyle Guy were, I expected one of them to at least get a little bit of love.
Yeah, it's I mean, I think it was only a 3-game slate that day,
Yeah.
and I'm forgetting the other games that were on that one and where a lot of the attention went in that one. But like the recency bias in preseason doesn't always play out because of the other point that you brought up. People don't go back and look how these guys performed. So like not everybody knew that he had a monster game the game before.
This is very, very true. That's a good call. So it's almost like, yeah, sometimes you can like outthink yourself.
Well, like, we talked about it. There's not a lot of preseason info out there the other day. And you and I were both not really interested in using James Harden. But one of the other few guys doing a lot of preseason info was like, this is the lock of locks. And we're like, I just don't get it. We really weren't into it. He didn't play big minutes, looking a little chubby out there per all the reports and everything like that. Like there's multiple ways to view the preseason and what it is that you find desirable and what your guesses are and what your theories are.
I agree. I think a lot of people view it the wrong way. Like kind of how you feel that way about playoffs in a lot of regards. I've seen lineups, in bigger and higher dollar stuff that have had guys that have played like 5 minutes each, all like rookies, guys that you've never heard of, just taking a chance that these guys are going to like play. Like that's not what the preseason is. If they were just going to play those guys, they wouldn't have preseason games. You know what I mean? Like these guys are good. Like their main players are going to play most of the game.
Yeah, it is different from team to team. Like for the Lakers, for example, I guess apparently I didn't watch the game. LeBron was looking tired pretty early last night. You knew he wasn't going to play big minutes, but the Lakers just got done winning a championship a couple weeks ago. Other teams haven't played since March. So getting their guys in shape, it's just a different type of strategy. The Lakers are like, unless LeBron James and Anthony Davis get into a car accident and break their legs, they're going to be in the playoffs. They don't need to worry about like getting out to a hot start this year because they already know they're really, really good.
I saw a lineup yesterday amongst other guys. This is the only guy I remember off the top of my head with Cristiano Felicio for the Bulls. Like he was probably 4K or 4,100. Like Wendell Carter was 5K. There's no reason to play Felicio.
Yeah, I mean, I get like trying to go off the reservation with a couple of these picks, and but that just doesn't work for me.
And with all your picks,
well, that's a great point. I think one of the things that we try to drive home in here is you don't need all long shot plays in your lineup. Like I remember, again, this is long before we met, and like I'd be sitting at my table like studying the GPP winning lineups from the night before, because I really was just kind of starting to understand contest selection a little bit better. And I'm like, damn, like I'm sitting here like trying to go contrarian with like 7 of 8 picks. No wonder I'm not doing very well consistently. Like looking at these lineups at top, like, oh yeah, they got 5 or 6 really, obvious plays, and then 2 guys at sub 10% ownership. You don't need to get crazy with everything.
Yeah, exactly. There's a big reason why a lot of those guys are going to be really low owned.
I think you've said before, sometimes when you pick a guy and he's 1% owned, he's 1% owned for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. Like most of the time, those guys aren't going to work out, especially in a sport like basketball. Baseball's different. We talk about that all the time.
Yeah, there's going against the grain, and then there's just not using any version of common sense. And I think I've brought this point up multiple times on the show, but I mean, this had to be 5 years ago. But somebody's like, I'm going to stack against Kershaw tonight and this is when Kershaw was like dominant Kershaw, like we saw at a couple points in the playoffs this year. And I'm like, well, there's a reason nobody's stacking against Kershaw. It's just, what are the odds that the team goes off against him versus, the other 30 games or 30 teams in play tonight? There's a reason it's 0.5% owned.
Yeah, exactly.
So that about does it for today, guys. If you got any questions, we are usually here to help, although I actually have kid stuff to do tonight. But outside of that, everybody, best of luck. Recommendations about how trying to improve this thing, get on Twitter. Start looking for beat reporters. Start looking for reports. There is stuff out there. Sometimes you don't hear anything, but there are diamonds in the rough that you can find. One of the great parts about doing this and having, customers and people you talk DFS with, I'll just be driving down the highway and all of a sudden my phone will ring and somebody will send me like, hey, Terry Rozier is supposed to play all 48 minutes tonight. That's not actually what's happening. I'm just saying like, you get lots of good information. You just got to look harder for it.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
It ain't as easy as going to Fantasy Labs NBA and Twitter and thinking they're just going to find out that everybody on the Boston Celtics is playing 48 minutes tonight.
It's definitely a different type of grind, and it's harder. So, it's just different, and a lot of people are lazy. So you can take advantage of it if you're willing to like put in I don't want to say work, but like the time, right?
I mean, it could be work. It depends on
Yeah,
what you like. You like doing that. A lot of people don't.
that's true. So it's just to each their own, right? And I think like there's a real edge. I mean, I talked about that one lineup I saw yesterday. Like, it's not like I looked through every lineup. Just one person having a lineup like that is an edge. And I'm sure other people are using players like that.
For sure. And I think that brings up an interesting discussion, like what's work and what isn't work. Like I don't look at DraftKings scoring like during the night because I just look at the box scores and like the math comes easy for me to add up, and it helps me recognize substitution patterns and what the coaches are doing. That might be work for somebody else, but I enjoy that, so it doesn't feel like work. This is the kind of thing like you like looking into this stuff. So, maybe it doesn't feel like work to you. There are other people out there, man. This feels like some tedious, monotonous, boring, watching paint dry type of stuff, and they don't like it.
I love hearing that because that means I get like, and it makes sense to me and I understand it. And I love hearing that because it just means less people will do it.
Yeah, I mean, work is different to everybody. So what you consider work, I mean, it's different for all of us. I mean, that's one of the fun parts about it. We're all on an equal playing field, but we got different ways to look at this stuff.
Truth, no doubt.
So, all right, guys, best of luck today. Hopefully somebody takes something nice down. Members only videos out before. Give that a look-see, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Thanks, guys.